Hi, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast. My name is Isabel Ross, and I'm the coach at Peak Endurance Coaching. Episode 97 is an interview with Annabel Hepworth, who is an amazing ultra runner. She has recently been awarded the Helen Stanger Award for the greatest single best ultra running achievement by a female under the age of 60, and the Ultra Performance of the Year award nominated by and voted on by the AURA, which is the Australian Ultra Runners Association, members for her across the year's 10-day performance from 2019 through to 2020, hence the name Across the Years. She won these two awards for that same event when she broke the Australian women's record back in January 2020, running 1,192.156 kilometres in the 10-day Across the Years in the USA. She was not only the first female, but first place overall. What an amazing achievement. In this episode, we discuss her running and racing background, her training, and her difficulties with sleep deprivation, all on International Women's Day. How awesome. If you enjoy this episode, please go on over to Apple Podcasts to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps grow the audience and helps me get high-profile athletes on the show. Thanks so much for your ongoing support. KP Bass gave 5 stars and said, "Thank you. Love the new intro. Always great interviews. Thanks for having a lovely interview style. Your podcasts always give great tips. Great to pop the podcast on and head out running and learn. Thank you." Thank you so much for that lovely review. And I'm glad you like the new intro too. Now, in collaboration with Injinji Performance Products, every month or so, I will bring a short interview with Craig Turco. He will keep us up to date on the latest gear for trail or ultra running, or pretty much any other adventure you could imagine. Sorry. Our first chat is in this episode, and we discuss Topo shoes. Now, I hope you find it interesting. Are injuries or niggles ruining your enjoyment of running and hindering your performance? Get on top of these by seeing the specialists at Health and High Performance. Utilising the latest in technology and with a wealth of experience, the team at Health and High Performance can assist you with all your running injury and performance needs. So to get back to enjoying your running and achieving the results you are capable of, head to healthhp.com.au/run or find them on Instagram, Health High Performance. Health and High Performance are located in Mont Albert, Melbourne, but are also available for telehealth appointments not only Australia-wide, but around the world as well. Contact them on their website to find out more. Wild Earth Australia are the online store to help you make the most of the outdoors with top quality gear at great prices. Peak Endurance podcast listeners can use the discount code Peak Endurance, which is all in capitals, to get 10% off at checkout. Head on over to wildearth.com.au to get everything you need for your next adventure. If you are looking to challenge your limits, you need to have structured, individualised training to help you get there. If you want to achieve your best, email me, Isabel, at peakendurancecoaching.com.au to get a program started. Enjoy the chat with Craig and the interview with Annabel. Hi, Craig, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast.
How are you going, Isabel? Thanks so much for having me.
No worries. Now, you're coming to us from Injinji Performance Products, where you have a variety of awesome products for runners and trail runners and ultra runners and everybody into adventures. Yeah. And we thought we would catch up and have a chat about some of the products that runners can look to you guys for. So I was wondering, what were you having today that might be of interest to us?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, we pretty much service runners head to toe, from everything from footwear to socks, apparel, hydration with Ultimate Direction and things like that. But I think today, given the newly released sort of Topo Athletic Cyclones, it could be good to talk about some shoes.
Yeah, because although you're called Injinji Performance Products, you don't just sell Injinji socks, do you? You sell a variety of things.
Yeah, correct. So we're essentially a distribution brand that distributes products for runners and good for you products for runners. So we don't just take on things that are there to make us a lot of money if it doesn't service the runner. So while a lot of the brands aren't, your flagship brands, they are definitely industry and category leaders in their own right. So we're runners ourselves, so we like the products that other people like, and that, if it's good for you, it's good for us too.
So, and in saying that, we're talking about Topo shoes. Why are Topo shoes good for us?
Very good question. So Topo Athletic, I'll give you a little bit of a history. It was started by a gentleman called Tony Post, hence the name Topo. So,
there you go. I never knew that. I like that.
Yeah. So Tony was actually a Division 1 track and cross country athlete in the States. So a big runner himself. And as you know, in running in the States, and particularly in D1 sort of NCAA running, it can be pretty intense training. So after uni, he left, or college as they call it, left and wanted to chase the dream of becoming a runner. And so he wanted to train harder, run further, run faster. And like a lot of top runners or runners in general, the more you increase your mileage and things like that, the more injuries come about.
Yep.
And so he often found himself being injured either through overtraining or as one of his sort of main pain points was from ill-fitting footwear. So he actually then began to work in the footwear industry for like 35 years and learned everything there was about footwear. And being a runner, he sort of steered towards what allowed runners to perform at their peak and perform at their best. And his passion obviously lay in footwear. So he went out to create a footwear brand that serviced runners as opposed to, becoming, again, just designing a product that people have to fit into. It's a product that fits people. So really, Topo is built on something that's, it's no nonsense. It's a simple product and it's designed for comfort and performance. It's an awesome product to give a go if you are a runner, and definitely add into your shoe quiver. So the big thing that sort of delineates Topo from anyone else is obviously the structure and the design. So if you've ever seen Topo shoes, I've actually got some here. So if you're watching this, they're an anatomical shoe. So what that means is they're designed to fit your foot. Quite often you'll see a very tapered running shoe. And while that's fantastic if you have a nice, small, narrow foot, you definitely don't want to be putting your feet into something that doesn't allow your foot to splay and move naturally. You move into a lot of issues when you do that, as you know. And so having something that was, in the structure of it, a very lightweight product, allowed your foot to splay and move, but had something like a really nice TPU heel counter that'll hold your heel in place so your foot doesn't flop around the shoe, and provide a secure fit. That's important,
Well, I know I've got a couple of Topo shoes, a couple of pairs, and I really like the wide toe box because, it lets my foot sit in its natural position rather than be squished in.
Exactly. So, I mean, that was the thing too, like, having a nice wide toe box is fantastic. A lot of the shoes are a lower drop sort of shoe, but we find that 5 mil drop is probably where we see most of our customers, because it gives people that natural running feel without, and all the features that you're used to in a regular running shoe, having some good stack height underneath your foot to cushion and protect it. That lower drop allows you to have that natural gait cycle without overstressing your calf and your Achilles and ultimately your plantar as well, by dropping your heel to the ground. So while we do service those runners, we have 0 mil, 3 mil and 5 mil drop shoes. He wanted to provide a shoe that allowed people to run naturally and feel comfortable in their gait cycle, but that wasn't going to injure them, based on a simple philosophy of, low drop, zero drop running,
Yeah, which can often happen with zero drop. I mean, it's great and the concept is great, but yes, it can lead to Achilles and calf issues.
Yeah, most definitely. The idea of shortening your stride and increasing your stride rate and your cadence is fantastic for, reducing load and stress. But there's definitely a balancing point. And if you're someone who's used, your regular running shoes, as I did, throughout my life, I tried to transition to a lower drop shoe down to zero drop, and unfortunately it resulted in me getting injured because it was just too much too soon. And regardless of what sort of transition period I tried to, take it as slow as possible, it wasn't right for me because that's not the way, I've developed as a runner.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's right, because we've all basically grown up wearing shoes. So to suddenly go to zero drop can be quite hard. So it's great that there is the 5 mil drop. I think that's a real good, compromise with low drop shoes.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's enough to give you that really nice natural feel. And again, like I keep saying, that sort of natural landing and planting of the foot, without feeling like you need kilometers and kilometers to warm up your tight Achilles and your calf. Yeah. And the nice thing too with Topo as a brand, like all of their shoes are really lightweight for what they are designed for. So the EVAs are nice and lightweight, are still responsive, and I found last incredibly well. And I think that's important too. When you've got a product that, is lightweight on your feet, you make hundreds of thousands of steps in your running shoes throughout its life cycle. To have something that is lightweight allows you to do what, when you put a lighter pair of like race flats on, for example, you feel fantastic. Yeah. You feel fast, you feel ready to go. So, having training shoes that are, between 180 and 200 grams is fantastic. We've just had the Cyclone released, which has been so popular, and it's because it provides it's got a good stack height underneath itself. Yeah. And it's just super comfy underfoot. So yeah,
awesome. And so which are the trail shoes that trail runners could go for?
Absolutely. So probably the most popular two shoes that we have are the mountain races and the ultra ventures. So the thing that's fantastic about the brand in general is they don't spare any expense on the material. So our trail shoes in the Ultra Venture 2s now and the mountain races have Vibram outsole. So Vibram's an Italian rubber company. They create, many different types of soles, and you've seen them on all your favorite brands. But basically they're durable and their traction is fantastic. So your mountain racer is a slightly lighter shoe, also 5 mil drop, as is the Ultra Venture 2. It's got a mega grip outer sole, so super sticky. As we discussed earlier, I live up here in the Blue Mountains, and anytime I'm running over some sandstone, I've never felt traction quite like in the mountain races.
I would agree.
And so we actually have the likes of hockey players who use the shoes because the shoes are so comfortable on turf as well. So, laterally they provide great support. And, again, the outer sole and the midsole lasts really well. All the trail shoes that we have with the Ultra Venture 2 and the Mountain Racer 2, and Ultra Venture Pro, which is basically a nice marriage between the two of those shoes.
Okay.
They have a 3-piece EVA midsole. So probably my favorite is the in the heel section, you have a nice cushioned EVA. So when you're descending, you just get a little bit of extra cushion underneath your foot. And again, with those, like with the Vibram outsole, you just get a great sort of life out of your shoe.
No, I would agree. And I've certainly found the mountain races really grippy. Up in the Dandenongs over clay and all sorts of things, and nice and light on my feet.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have, for example, a training shoe that you can do high mileage in, but then if you want to pick it up for a workout, you don't necessarily need to change out into a lighter weight shoe.
That's right.
Yeah. Even your mileage trainers are lightweight. So yeah.
Yeah, well, they are a great shoe. And where can people go to get a pair?
So what you can do is actually, we highly recommend supporting your local retailer. So you can actually jump on our website, injinjiperformanceproducts.com.au. So I'll shoot you through a link so you can share with everyone.
I'll put that in the show notes.
But you can jump on there and there will be a store locator. So you can find a store closest to you to check them out and obviously get fitted by a shoe professional. Or you can check out the range online if you just want to find out more about the products, or should your local retailer not have exactly what you're chasing in store. But yeah, definitely check it out, and definitely try shop local where you can, especially given the last 12 months we've had.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much. Now, we've been chatting and saying that we'll make this a regular sort of monthly or so little snippet where we talk about some different products that are great for runners and trail runners. So I look forward to chatting with you next time and seeing what other awesome products you have to share with us.
Most definitely. We'll do some exclusive gear releases for you guys.
Excellent. Sounds like fun. All right. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Isabel. Thanks for having me.
Bye. Let's go. Hi, Annabel, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast.
Isabel, hi. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Now, can you tell the listeners a bit about yourself, your general athletic background, and how you got into running and then ultra running?
Well, during school, I don't know that athletic is the word you'd use to describe me. I think generally forgetting my gear, trying to sit on the side, having a chat to friends was my idea of a really good PE lesson. Yeah. By the time I hit university, running just became something I started to like to do, to get away from study.
Yeah.
So I continued. Really, I'd always run. I went into studied for as many years as I humanly could, and then finally started working.
I loved being a student too, so I totally get it.
I had a great time.
Yeah,
there was
me
a lot
too.
of time to run, actually.
Yeah, best time of my life.
Then I went into daily newspaper journalism, took a job on the Australian Financial Review, which is a national daily newspaper. And again, running was just my source of stress relief. And I ran when I was pregnant with my daughter. She's now 15. I would get curious looks running as a pregnant person 15 years ago.
That would have been frowned upon.
It was. I had someone say to me, "What if you fall?" And I thought, well, I fall anyway. I'm a clumsy person. I could fall anyway. I didn't feel that running was a, particularly high risk activity. I had a midwife-led model for my care when I was pregnant, and they said, "Look, if you've been running for years, don't wrap it up at this point. But you'll be, we don't see any reason for you to stop." Yeah. So I ran throughout my pregnancy, ran when I was on maternity leave, and I took a job, changed jobs in about 2010, went over to the Australian, and my husband also went. I met my husband at the Fin. He was in journalism. His star rose, I guess, for want of a better way of describing it, and he moved more into the commercial side and started doing other things. So by the time we hit the Australian, I'd started getting interested in more long distance kind of running, marathons. I was running with City Striders on a Sunday morning. I met a lot of ultra runners and people doing kind of interesting things. And I don't know what actually prompted me to do my first ultra. It was the Canberra 50 kilometre. I think I would have done the Canberra marathon by then. I was at a point in my life where I was increasingly aware that being in a situation where my husband and I were both in media, having worked together for all these years, it just became apparent that we needed our own interests and activities were not work related for both our sakes. And so I think I sort of learned of these events, and that was the appeal initially, was this is something that I'll do, that I'll have time away from family and come back and have something to talk about. So my first was the Canberra Marathon. I did the 50K and I loved it because I think the year that would have been about 2011. And my recollection of that year was you'd get to the end of the marathon and then you'd stare at them blankly, the course marshals, and they'd stare at you blankly and you'd say, I'm supposed to keep going. I'm doing these extra, whatever it was, 7.5, nearly 8 kilometres. And I think we pointed in different directions. Somehow they sent me around, I think it was Lake Burley Griffin for the final leg, the ultra distance. And it struck me that everyone was having so much fun once the actual marathon part of it. All of the parties seemed to be happening on that side of the race. So that kind of got me hooked. And then from there, I jumped into 100 kilometres. There was a race in Mongolia, sunrise to sunset, which is, incredibly beautiful.
Wow, so you went from Canberra to Mongolia.
I was in Canberra to Mongolia. I was, not long before that, we'd been very fortunate. My husband and I had taken our daughter through Armenia, Azerbaijan and Georgia. And so I'd done all this running at altitude during that trip because it was just such beautiful scenery. So it meant that I turned up and did this race in Mongolia. It was this big loop. You would do the first 42 back to camp and decide, do I want to continue to 100 or if I can call it a day here? So I think I sat down and ate lunch and I twiddled my thumbs for an hour or so. And I thought, no, okay, I'm just going to keep going and I'll just do this 100K. I ran to the cutoff. I walked a lot of it, and just really enjoyed it. And as I say, I wasn't ambitious about time, quite the opposite. I figured my job was to make it through each checkpoint right before they closed, and that was fine. So I did Mongolia, and then I think it just went from there. I never hesitated to jump into longer stuff. So I think I probably did 24-hour quite quickly. And I remember the first one I did, I think I slept most of the night because I couldn't even contemplate the idea of running through the night. It just seemed, I thought, what's wrong with these people? This is absolutely horrendous.
The night's for sleeping, isn't it?
Thank you for sleeping. So I set up a swag and I had a fantastic night's sleep in the swag, got up the next morning and finished what was left of the race. And I think it was that one where I got a call from the then Aura president, Rob, saying something to the effect of, we might have to give you this one. I think that one could have been like the Nationals that year. And he was like, we might have to give you an award because there's people who haven't paid their fees and blah, blah, blah. And we've worked our way down to you. And I did not cover myself in glory on that race, believe me. Because whatever, where I'm getting rewarded for total underperformance.
It's like the best effort award.
It was because so that again got me hooked, that sense of, and I think, the sport's changed. It's still got this at its heart, I think, but you don't see it as much, that sense of anything really. You don't know who is going to be at a race. Yeah. It could be your day because a lot of people aren't there. It may well not. You might have someone turn up apparently out of nowhere and just blow everyone away.
Yeah.
So I went. So as it just was like a gateway for me. So I did some desert races, again probably too early. Some multi-day. I did one in the Simpson. I did one in the
but too early according to who? Because you seem to be doing all right.
Yeah, I think I probably did okay. I wouldn't, if someone asked me how to get into this sport, I wouldn't advocate aggressively doing that. I got away with it, but it wouldn't be something I'd necessarily recommend to somebody. Yeah. Just in terms of injury avoidance and just life stress.
No, I totally agree, but clearly it worked for you.
Yeah, it did. It did for a really long time. I was quite happy to be on a certain treadmill where Corona's changed all this, but I was really happy to be just constantly on the move. I discovered 6-day races, which were, I guess, have been my real love affair in ultra running. It would have been about 2014. I'd done, I'd started a bit of multi-day stuff, 48 hours, 72 before that. And they put one on in Adelaide in, I think it was 2014 from memory. And And it was a tiny race. We were out at the Adelaide Parklands. It was a 1 kilometre loop from memory. There was maybe a dozen of us on the race. And actually, I had a shocker. I thought I had my head around the concept. I didn't. I got soft tissue injury really early, so I was sidelined for a lot of it. And I really, really couldn't deal with the mental side of it. To the point where, it was quite interesting. I would take a cup of tea into the bathroom on the course, and I would sit this cup of tea on a sharps bin, and I would just keep my fingers crossed that some person walking a dog would come in and ask, "What are you doing here, and what are your friends doing?" And I could talk to them, and they could tell me their life story. And there was too much of this, because all I could see was just this. I felt like I was staring into the abyss. It was like 6 long days. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And as I say,
and what day was it that you were feeling this? Please don't tell me it was day 1. Oh, day 2. No, that's almost as bad as day 1.
Day 2 is interesting on these races. Day 1, you are still full of hopes and dreams. And
that's right. And the will to live. Yeah.
The will to live. You've slept. It's all great. You're going to have a ball.
Yeah.
And then day 2 is where reality strikes. And it's struck around then on that race. I didn't know how to handle that at that point. But I came out of it intrigued how one might, how it might be possible to do this and actually enjoy it and want to be doing it. Which is a slow process. But the day 2 thing, you see that on all of the 6-day races. Even I think even with some of the male runners included who've done sensationally well, you can see it in people's faces and demeanours. It's just that sense of, I've gone out, I've probably done too much on day 1, despite knowing better. People do it time and time again. And then
that damn adrenaline.
That's right. Something will smash them. It'll be dew point or sunrise or something, and then you start to see reality sets in for people. Yeah. And so since then, I've done 9 or 10. I think if you include the 10-day race I did it across the years, I think that probably takes me to about 10 6-day races.
Wow. So obviously you managed to work out a way of getting through that the 2-day blues.
Yeah.
And so what have you done to develop your mental strength?
It's an interesting thing. I didn't consciously train that. I think for me, a lot of my ability to handle the 6-day mentally, I've learned it on the job, so to speak. It's been something that I've finessed by doing a few of these races. So I did, as I say, my first one, a lot of things do go wrong in these races. It's just the nature of them.
I can imagine.
There's just the potential over that time frame. You get that exponential rise in what can go wrong and what does go wrong. So I wasn't having a great first race anyway. I think by the time I did the second, that was in Pietermaritzburg in South Africa, tiny race. There was a handful of runners, myself, someone from Israel who's gone on to run the 3,100 mile Sri Chinmoy race. There was a couple of, that was Kobe. There was a couple of others of us. I didn't know this at the time, but I was sensationally anemic, and I couldn't work out why I wanted to sleep. 6 or so hours into the race, I went into the kitchen and took what turned out to be about a 4-hour nap. And I was jet lagged, and I woke up and thought, oh, what am I doing? This is actually a race. I maybe need to spend some time on the course. So I didn't have a great race in terms of the actual distance, but mentally I enjoyed that one a lot more. And I could see that actually time just sped up with each successive day, and they do that. I don't know why, they just seem to do that on these races.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so I had a couple of kind of aha moments during that race, just in terms of the fact that, time it does seem to accelerate as the race progresses. 6 days sounds like a long time, but it is a long time, but at the same time, it does go incredibly fast.
Okay.
And that sort of surprised me. And then I just kind of worked out what routine works for me. And I think I also, I guess, got over myself in that sense of feeling like I was always a pretty mediocre, look, I've had some okay races, but I certainly never mastered the 24-hour, and I've never mentally mastered the 24-hour. I've got to.
What do you find harder about 24 hours than 6 days?
Oh my God, the sleep deprivation.
Because you can sleep during a 6-day. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I've just got a really strong circadian rhythm. I just feel totally dysphoric at 3 a.m, no matter what the circumstances, no matter whether I'm in a pretty happy state mentally, I'm having a good race, 3 a.m. just doesn't work for me. And I think it is trainable. I think if you are committed and want to do that, I think there's ways and strategies you can use. But I've never mastered that. And so I sort of realised on that race I had to get over feeling like I'm a bit of a failure in terms of my inability to just stay awake like everyone else. Except that maybe there was a way it would work for me. With 6 days, there's almost 2 schools of thoughts, and most people are in between. At the one extreme, you can move quite slowly and get very little rest, or you take a view, you really try and move as fast as you can, and you take more time off the course and you rest physically. Yeah. And I realised I had to work with that physical need I've got for sleep. It's partly physical, it's mental.
But I think it's best to work with your body rather than try and fight it.
Yeah. That's and that has been, for me, that was one of the things that's allowed me to have even any desire to continue with it. I think if I'd gone beyond 2, where I was banging my head against a wall saying I need to overcome my desire to be asleep at 3 a.m, I would have just stopped. Why would I put myself through it again? So it was that working within the parameters you've got, because I do think it's interesting, this question of what's trainable, and what are those?
Because I've heard sleep deprivation is not trainable.
I don't think it is. I think you can. I think there are mental strategies that will get you through, say, a 24-hour. I'm not dead on. I'm not unable to keep my eyes open on a 24-hour, but I am so despondent at usually around 3. It is just best for me, and it's best for everybody, that I do something. Whether on sort of the ones where, for instance, when I needed to qualify for C2K, I knew I had to get to 180, and that meant I couldn't go off for hours. So I think I did a deal with myself. I'd get off the course for 15, 20 minutes at a certain point, and so I spent a couple of hours saying, there won't be no break. There will be a break here. And that worked. But I think sleep deprivation is interesting. I think it is a struggle to train yourself.
I mean, my time is 2 a.m, so I totally get it. And I struggle, and so I just have to have a nap. Like, I just have to.
Because you've done Berkeley, that's right?
Berkeley, yeah, but I didn't. I only got through 1 lap. I was over time, so I didn't really go that long without sleep. I've done a 24-hour and I didn't sleep.
I remember you had an amazing race.
Yeah, but I was so wonky by the end. I couldn't even hold my body straight. So it really affects me. And I've done 44 hours on a trail ultra, but I was hallucinating. So by the end. So sleep deprivation really affects me as well. So I totally get it. Now, you've actually just recently been awarded with the Helen Stanger Award. I'm going to just read this bit. For the greatest single best ultra running achievement by a female under the age of 60, and so it's 2 awards, and the Ultra Performance of the Year Award, nominated by and voted on by the AURA members, which is the Australian Ultra Runners Association. And that was for your across the years 10-day performance, which was across 2019 to 2020. And you won both those awards for that same event when you broke the Australian women's record in January. It ended up being 2020, running 1,192.156 kilometres in the 10 days across the years, which was in the States. And you were not only the first female, but you were first overall. So what a remarkable achievement.
Thank you. Yeah.
And congratulations on being getting those well-deserved awards from AURA.
Thank you.
First of all, can you tell the listeners, because we've spoken about the 6-day race and you did touch on the 10-day race, I looked it up and read all about it, but did you want to just tell the listeners a little bit about the race itself, like 10 days and what kind of a loop is it and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so it's in Phoenix, Arizona, so it's desert.
Yeah.
And it's held, the whole purpose of this particular race, and the reason it's called Across the Years, is as best they can, they like all runners to be on the course as the new year is coming in. And by that I mean, if you can choose when to do, say, 24, 48, 72-hour options. The 6 days obviously fixed, and they put on a 10-day this particular year. So it's called Across the Years because of that.
Yeah.
So they've been having a 6-day for years at this site, Camelback Ranch, which is the spring training facility for the White Sox and the Dodgers, which are baseball teams.
Cool.
And what it is it's a course to describe. It's a little over a mile as a loop. It's a hard packed dirt, I guess you describe it, country road. There's a little gravel patch, which some years has been deeper and more problematic than others.
Mm-hmm.
In the centre, there's a lake, so it's actually quite scenic and beautiful. There's a lot of cactus around, and then you see a residential street on one side, and you see a pharmacy and more street on the other side, and then you see the back of it's literally a parking lot full of where people put their RVs during the race.
Okay, yep.
Going. So it's a 1 mile loop. There's a little tiny bit of a hill that I think everyone starts to call Camelback Hill at some point.
Yeah, I read that after a while that hill becomes quite
it does
difficult.
It gets you psychologically. Yes. And I'd done a 72-hour day on that race on that site before, and I'd done 2 6 days, a goodish one and a not good one. So this year, I think to mark, I'm not sure what they were marking. It could have just been the fact we were going into a new decade. They decided to put on a 10-day. Now, the 6 days a standard distance. It's got a long history. It dates back to the 1870s.
Okay.
10 days is a bit of a funny beast. It has got some history. So certainly the Sri Chinmoy Marathon team have been putting on a 10-day in New York for years.
Yeah, that's right.
And we've had other 10-day race options put on over the years. So they decided to hold a 10-day this particular race. We had, I think, 50 to 60 runners doing the 10-day.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was great. There was a huge turnout. We started on the same day as the 6-day runners in New York with the Sri Chinmoy team. The 10-day runners start, and when you're a 6-day runner, you join them on the start of their day 4.
Yeah.
Or after day 4. With this one, the 6-day runners started with us. So so you didn't get the benefit of fresh legs towards the end. What you got is potentially faster runners to keep an eye on and to
because that would sort of drag you along a bit, wouldn't it?
It does, yeah. And then they just up and leave you. Literally that last when they all go after you get to the 144 hours split, they all pack up pretty fast.
Oh, and then I'd be so jealous.
Yeah, you have that sort of, I could have just signed up for the 6-day race. Why was I actually thinking doing 10 days?
Oh, gosh.
But it did have a nice, it had it's got a particular vibe, this race. It gets a lot of repeat offenders a lot of people there, and you do it each year. Murray Boyd, who was an Australian age grouper who lives over in California, she tends to do the race. She wasn't on this one, but she's done it with me in other years. It's an interesting. I was surprised to have a good race because I went into it thinking I don't do well on trails. I'm actually a disastrous trail runner. It's unbelievable how bad I am.
Are you the type that trips all the time?
I trip, I get lost. I'm double jointed and therefore very unstable. And I'm all over the place. I didn't go in there expecting to. I thought that the fact that this wasn't tarmac would work against me, but in fact, I think it probably favoured all of us because tarmac can be so
a bit softer.
Yeah, that softer surface turned out to be good. And look, Camille Herron turned up. She had planned on having a crack at the 48-hour American record at the very least with her. And I think she started day 2 because we'd had some rain. She wanted the course to dry. And so, it was an interesting thing to have someone of that extraordinary leg speed on the course. She pulled out maybe 12 hours in. She was struggling with injury, but she was just flying around. And you have to be careful because you're like, I'm running with Camille Herron. I need to have a chat to her and say a few things before she,
barrels past.
Dust. So that, I think that did give everyone a bit of a boost. But it's a really nice race.
Yeah. And so with that, do you change directions at all?
Yeah, for fatigue management reasons, I think we did 4 hourly in other 6-day iterations of ATY. So I'm struggling to remember some of the detail here, but so the people who do the timing, Bill Schultz and Mike Milton, who are quite well-known fixtures on the ultra circuit in the US in terms of timing guys.
Yeah.
They knew they needed to get enough, for 10 days, they couldn't be doing turnarounds too frequently or they'd get very fatigued themselves. Yeah. So we changed, I think from memory, we changed to every 6 hours. Yeah. So we went longer between drinks than we would ordinarily, but it was still,
But with a larger loop, that's not quite so important, is it?
No. I think it's a bigger problem. It's a bigger issue when you've got. I did one in Pretoria, South Africa, and it was about a half a mile, and it was essentially the driveway to a golfing range. Actually, I'm underselling it. It actually was stunning visually to look at. Okay. There was a lot. We had peacocks on the course every day. It was nice. A lot of fun, but 800 meters roughly beats you. It breaks you a bit, and there were tight turns and all kinds of things. For this, we could have gone a lot longer than we did. And I think the turnarounds, yes, they do break up the pressure points on the body, but it's the psychological aspect of marking time that you've hit another milestone. And it's also just seeing people actually eyeballing them. And, you've done these races, you have that bizarre thing that happens where you think people you've been wanting to talk to for 8 hours aren't on the track. And in fact, they've been just behind you the entire time, and you're oblivious because you just haven't slowed, you haven't stopped long enough to make coffee or whatever you do, that you've actually gone, oh no, you're still out here. And so you finally see them on the turnaround.
And so you said there were 50 to 60 people in the race. Yeah. Do you know whether it was predominantly female or male?
That's a really interesting question. I should have a look at the numbers for this. I suspect it was a reasonably even mix.
Oh, good.
I have done races where it's been, not many, but I've certainly done 1 or 2 where it has been really male dominated.
Yes, and that's what I was wondering.
And I did this one, oh dear. Look, he's a great race director. I really enjoy the race, but I did this one in Athens where there are a lot of blokes, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, how hard is it to use the portaloo? And it's like urinating on the side, and you just something like that. Women do bring a civilizing influence to these races.
I like that, a civilizing influence. Very true.
That one, I think that one was fairly even.
Yeah.
It felt like it was quite even, and there was a lot of just the race director, Jubilee, and looks one of the women who was running the kitchen, Jamil Khoury's mother, was there, and I felt like there was a lot of actual female support on that sort of administrative side of the race.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is. I do find this interesting, the extent to which these races do appeal to women versus men, because while the best women's performance on a 6 days 880 something, Giannis Kouros has a 10:36, 10:38.
But that
This
is Giannis
just
Kouros, yeah.
Exactly, and I think you do get that outlier effect.
Yes.
But I think they are a race where women do have the potential to come into line with men a bit more than perhaps.
Yes.
I mean, I don't have the
totally
numbers to back
agree.
this up, but I think that percentage to which you're, a really outstanding woman can catch a Giannis type number. I think that might narrow a bit at these distances than over, say, a 24. As I say, I haven't done the numbers. It's just the sense I have.
No, but I think that's generally the way the trend goes. The longer it goes, the more the women equalise out in the results, and which is borne out by your first place overall. So how far behind was the first male?
From memory, so I think that would have been Philip. And I've run. He's a new northeast US runner, and he's really good when he has a good race. He's just a joy to behold. I had previously done a race with him in New Jersey, and he took a very different approach to me. I'm quite relentless. If I'm not sleeping, I'm on that course moving. Yeah. Whereas I see Philip, he'd fly around and these legs. And then you see him, and he's sitting on the side having a sandwich and a drink. And I think you could eat that sandwich while you're moving, my friend. So just
I mean, you would eat while you're moving, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but this one was I think he was having a harder time from the start. It was cold.
Yeah.
And I think I can't remember keeping an eye on the numbers too much, but I kind of was aware that this gap had opened up quite early. It was a really strange thing. I got a message from someone in Australia who watches these races, and they said to me at the end of day one, you realise, well, like, what are you doing, you idiot, was the under And I had just run to feel, but I'd really been feeling good that first day, and I think I was into the 170s or so, which is much more than I would have. It wasn't the smartest pacing strategy, but it kind of came out.
But once again, it worked.
Yeah, it worked. But I did get messages from people saying, you're ahead of people on the 6th day, and I thought, that's just the weirdest thing. That's not, oh dear, I've got this up. Someone who prides myself on not running like a man. I think I've run like a man here. But yeah, it sort of opened up and never really closed. And I remember I had a chat to Phil, and who was behind me, and he said, I'm watching you're out in front, and he said he wanted to have a quite even pacing strategy given the length of the race. It was 10 days. And I remember saying to him, we can see how my pacing strategy fares. I made a conscious decision at the 72-hour mark to try and pull it back a bit. Yeah. I felt like, what are you doing, Annabel? I was at about 4:20, and I knew it was potentially it was a high risk strategy to try and keep that level of momentum going, aside of the fact my body would have done it anyway. But I sort of made a mental decision. I needed to take a breath here, because this wasn't about my best ever 6-day split. And there was that thought of, should I try for an 800 here? Very few women have done that. It'd be a great thing. And I was torn between thinking, that's actually physically very difficult. It won't be necessarily pretty. And then I thought, where does that leave me for the next 4 days? It could be, and I've seen people set intermediate records before, and this phenomenon seems to happen where they just run out of, the adrenaline goes, or something happens and they just run out of steam. And I realised I wanted a good 10-day result, and I started to get more interested in the 1,000K. At about that time, I thought, well, if the wheels don't fall off, I might be able to have a go at this 1,000K mark. And this is where having had some really bad races came into its own. And I couldn't have had a race where I'd done so well, and I think kind of gotten to the limits of what my body is able to do, if I hadn't had some races that had gone pear-shaped. And 6-day races that have gone pear-shaped. And so even with ATY, I'd had a not bad race, I think, where I'd gotten first female a couple of years prior. Slept a lot, but it had been okay. The next year, everything was wrong, and I was kind of injured, and I was walking, and it was miserable, beyond brutally cold. It was just a hard race for everyone. But I think I got perhaps second female, and I decided if I wasn't going to have a a great race, I should at least hang on to position, which I guess is the thing you fall back on when you can't get the distance you want.
Yeah.
And so having had a bad race on that course, it did give me a sense of what the worst case scenario was anyway, and what it looked like in terms of the numbers, what it felt like to have a not great time. So I could sort of work backwards from that, if it makes sense, and say, well, okay, say the wheels fall off, I can still get to this. And so that was able to help me psychologically deal with this. What am I trying to do here? Knowing what the worst case scenario would look like, and it wasn't worst case scenario anyway. But I did realise I needed to keep an eye on not building up a sleep debt, and so I was getting a lot of rest and just quite disciplined about that.
And I was going to ask that. What did you do about sleep? Like, so how much sleep did you have over the 10 days?
Oh, look, you know, there's this weird thing where people like to spreadsheet what people do. I did actually some numbers, and I think typically for this, even as I was even had some 6-hour laps. So that 6 hours did include going from the timing that to the RV and finishing the loop in the morning.
So you were maybe napping for 5 hours?
Yep. Yeah, 4 to 6 most nights. I think there would have been probably at the start. I'd have gone a bit shorter when I was super fresh, but I couldn't put myself. I would have blown myself up had I tried to squeeze it too much, because the thought in the back of your mind then becomes, oh God, I'm going to, and it's very hard to break this kind of negative thinking, I think, once you get into this rut. The thought would have been, oh my God, 3 hours, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to be tired, cranky, cold. And we had creature comfort, so we were able to have RVs there, but we didn't have facilities. We didn't have a utilities thing to plug them into. So the RV's power was based on what it came with, and I didn't realise you needed to feed an RV to keep it alive and going. And so the electricity ran out, the water ran out, and I was going off the course every day to have a shower, which I felt was quite important for a few reasons. Psychologically, I just thought there's limits on what I'm prepared to put myself through for 10 days. Yeah. And I was quite concerned about cellulitis risk. I've had that on a few races. And
what's that?
So skin infection around the ankles, because I'm a clumsy kind of a runner and I'm constantly tripping over my own feet, I scratch up my ankles.
Oh, so does your heel come through and kick your ankle?
Oh yeah, it kicks my whole leg. I mean, I'm a disaster, really. Yeah. And so I've had, and what tends to, you see a bit of this on the 6 day. People get problems with the tibant. It tends to be exacerbated by putting on a timing chip quite tightly around the ankle. The fabric itself can be a bit abrasive.
Yes,
and
I
then
can
you
imagine.
you get a little tiny bit of kind of all that edema and compartment syndrome stuff going on. And it's why I think you get cankles at the end of some races. You see people who put those glorious pictures on Facebook and so on. That kind of a scenario for me has ended in cellulitis. And the problem with cellulitis is once it's in, if you don't have antibiotics with you, it can really, it can become a systemic infection. You can be in a lot of trouble. So I went off the course each day to shower, to actually really wash myself properly and to reapply tape to my feet, because again, I'd had a bad experience on another race where I'd let the used sheep's wool, I'd let the tape go for days, and it was a really stupid thing to do. And I sort of knew I couldn't take those risks on such a long race.
No, definitely.
So there was a lot of so there was these 2 periods. There was sleep and there was that kind of like you can't give in, you're not succumbing to that temptation to go too crazy. If you don't do the self-care piece, you pay.
So if you're saying you were having 4 to 6 hours of sleep, what for like a 6 day, just to deviate for a second, how much sleep would you have on a 6 day?
Oh, I used to religiously do 6+ hours. I had a view for a very long time no one was interfering with my sleep, and I didn't care for what they said. I was only prepared to even contemplate the possibility of cutting that back to more like 4 hours when I did the Adelaide race in 2018.
So you were going for basically the same previously with the 6 day. You'd go for about 6 hours.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was getting a lot of people comment to the point where I was almost, I was the person who was always off sleeping for these really long periods. But it was
necessary for you.
It was necessary, and I think for me to even push back that sleep, a few things had changed in my life. Like I got out of daily journalism in mid 2018, and not being in that pressure cooker environment, I think it meant there wasn't that cumulative stress in your life. Mine had diminished as a result of that, and I felt like I could probably revisit that on the sleep a bit. So I did in Adelaide, and the other piece, of course, was I wasn't jet lagged, which made a huge difference. Yeah.
And now, when you do a race like the 10 day, do you have a run walk strategy?
I run walk to feel, and I know people, and it works. Look, it works for some people brilliantly. They spreadsheet things and they go on with quite rigid plans.
I'm getting the impression that a lot of these multi-day race people love spreadsheets.
Yeah, I know a few people who love spreadsheets. I mean, I like a good spreadsheet too, but...
Oh, no, I don't.
Look, they can be good, but not for managing me. I'm very happy to impose a spreadsheet on another human being. And I love to do that. But it's not how I like to work. So I didn't go into it with anything other than a loose idea of what my best race has been and roughly where I'd been each day. But beyond that, I literally just walked the field, and I'm a pretty good walker. Yep. And I just felt like on that race, I did to get where I did. I ran more than I would have on other races, but it was, again, I just felt like the body was up for that. And my mind was very clear.
And I really believe in running by feel. Like, I think you know your body better than a spreadsheet knows your body. Yeah.
I've seen people who just put themselves under huge amounts of pressure trying to, because they, yes, they're capable of revising things, but in that moment before they do that, you can see the pressure people are putting themselves under. And look, it can work. I mean, sometimes people go in and with very rigid plans and they have these most sensational outcomes, but I think other times you've got to go with what your body's telling you. Yeah.
And the thing is that, like you alluded to earlier, is every race is different, and different things crop up, and things will crop up, but it could be different each time. What did you do about shoes? Did you use the one pair, or did you interchange shoes? Or?
So I'm actually quite a shambolic person in life, unfortunately for me. And
you didn't have a spreadsheet for your shoes, Annabel?
No, I don't. I wish. No, I have spreadsheets for work and other things, but not for this. Unfortunately, no. I should. Actually, life would be a lot better if I did put a spreadsheet. In my own head, I know what to pack because I've done a lot of these things. Shoes, so I threw it all together probably the night before I was due to fly out. I know to pack a few pairs of shoes, and some really good advice I was given right before I did the Racing the Planet Chile race was one of the organisers said to me, you want to think about having a pair of shoes that's a size bigger because your feet may well swell and this is a problem. And that's really stuck with me. And so I always pack different models, different sizes, because sometimes you're just going to feel like a shoe that's sort of, slower, less responsive, but's got a lot of mushy stuff underneath it. Other times you need, you just want something with a huge big toe box, a huge big toe box. Other times you might actually want a shoe that's got very little to it. So I packed one or two pairs, and I think I bought a pair over there. Where I got into trouble a bit was my favourite pair, because it was a very sandy kind of a course.
Oh, okay.
They sort of absorbed sand, and they were the race organisers were watering the course quite frequently just to keep it from getting dry and just gnarly. And so my shoes became a bit concrete-like, and I'd be there in the dark in my RV, the alarm or whatever would go off at 5 and the lights had run out because I didn't realise that these things needed to be plugged in, or you need to turn on the engine to get the power working. So I'd be there in the dead of night in the dark, and I'd be trying to get this damn piece of concrete to open and yield to my foot. And so I realised I couldn't wear my favourite, the shoes I wanted to wear that I was very happy with. I had to go to a similar but not the same model, and they did actually have less of a heel drop, and that did affect me. I got a bit plantar-y. But that's a logistics organising thing, and it's harder when you're travelling because you can't pack everything. But,
although I always try.
Yeah, but that stuff can get you. It's funny, and you do see people every now and then. Just they're asking around for pairs of shoes, and then of course you get that classic thing. Yeah, and you get the shoe surgery on the 6th day.
Cutting out the toes and that.
Yeah, they I think a 6-day runner really loves getting a Stanley knife and doing they can to their shoes.
And so, did you have a crew?
No, I don't. Other than CDK, I don't get crew.
Why?
A few reasons. Look, I certainly, my husband's super busy, works really hard, and looks after our kid while I do this, and so I'm grateful. I'm not going to ask him to crew.
Yeah.
And so it becomes. Look, a few things. I feel like I'm imposing on people when I ask them to come and watch me for all of this time.
True, it is a long time.
It's a long time, and it's this issue of am I going to be worried about my crew, and are they getting along, and are they needing something out of this, and am I giving it to them or am I not giving it to them? And going lone wolf has always worked for me. I mean, I can see how having a crew definitely would help. But I think you do unleash this whole other thing of the psychology of having a crew, and I think that does it does have its impacts too.
Look, I agree. I've done races with and without crews, and there's benefits to each. Yeah. And how in God's name do you train for something like this?
Yeah, I'd just been doing a lot of events really when I did that one, and I had done the 6th day in Adelaide, and
so that's like in August or something, isn't it?
September, late September. So
so that was pretty close.
Very close, yeah. I think I got away with it just, and I was aware it was close. I was probably sailing a bit close to the wind. Did Adelaide, wanted to have a better race than I did. We got smashed with the heat in the last couple of days, and I didn't manage that well. And this is where not having a crew. And look, other people's crews were very helpful, but I didn't manage the hydration part particularly well. Came out of it feeling like I could have done better, but didn't. But that's the nature of it.
Yeah.
And then I did a kind of rested for a while, and then I went to this race in Malacca, or just outside of Malacca, in Malaysia. It was this 200k race in about November.
Seriously?
Yeah, it was a ball. I mean, it was such a fun race. It was like these 200-kilometre loops, and I didn't have a particularly I didn't have a bad race. I was still quite fit from that, and just had a ball. It was just a lot of fun. And then I went and thought, I've got this big race coming up. I think I should get some rest. And my daughter's school breaks up early. We'd gone into the holidays. I took her to Vietnam, and so what I did there was actually I remember once Martin Fry telling me a story about being fed a lot of ice cream ahead of a Sri Chinmoy race in New York, and that it probably worked for him. And I thought, if he said this, it's got to be excellent advice, and I'm just going to do that. And so that was actually what I did that was December. December was just eating my way. I mean, I did some running, but, it was mostly just eating my way around Vietnam. And
good for you.
In hindsight, I think it probably was a big part of why I had a good race, because actually for once in my life, I was kind of rested, both mentally and physically. And
also I find the Vietnamese food when I was there, it's really clean and healthy and really good. So if you're going to eat a lot, that kind of food is good.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. And so you felt like maybe you went into it like full of energy from having rested and eaten the correct amount, basically, for it. That's awesome to know.
It wasn't. I wasn't because I'm smart or had planned well. It just kind of happened that way, and I'd had, as I said, I'd taken this very good advice I'd heard, and it did. I think it you do see people that I'm sometimes a bit shocked by what I see people doing in terms of distance. And I'm someone who likes to run a lot and do really long events, but I just, the way I've noticed, and maybe it's amplified by COVID, but talking to other runners lately, I do feel like a lot of people are teetering with burnout. And I just, without calling it burnout, I feel like a lot of people in my age group,
I would agree.
What they're articulating is a version, they are, and it's hard to know, do you say, well, I think you're burnt out? Because I think I've been burnt out plenty of times. And people haven't said it to me, and maybe they should have. Maybe they just said, you know what, you really need a big break, go for a holiday. But yeah, I think it's a trap that you can fall into. And I think, if you love running, but the idea that you need to do these epic distances in order to then do these events, I don't think it really stacks up to scrutiny. And I think
I think it just exhausts you, basically.
I think it does too. I think the smart operators, some of the ones who've done really well, have been quite strategic about what they do. I'm thinking of, say, Joe Fayers. Yeah. So
what would you say would be your average sort of weekly mileage?
Look, it varies. I mean, it varies dramatically for me because I don't. I'm not somebody who runs to a plan, and so at the moment, I'm more interested in Netflix and the couch, and the fact that we're still sort of on border closures, kind of, or are we? So I don't have particularly high hopes for this year.
No.
So at the moment, not much. But look, I mean, I suppose if you were to average it ahead of like going into that race in end of 2019, start of 2020. I'd have been doing anything from 100 kilometres to potentially 100 miles a week on average. So there's plenty of weeks where it's 5 kilometres to the bakery and that's it. And I'm lucky if I can get out to get a coffee the next day running there. But then I'll have these other weeks where I've done an event and I'm not taking a huge amount of rest afterwards. So but
and would you do speed work when you're building up for an event?
No. Running, I think this is why I started in ultras. The idea of having to push and run really hard for a marathon, it doesn't interest you. It doesn't interest me, and I think you have to look. I'm getting better at this as I get older. I think you have to be really judicious about things that stress you, and I know people do things like say, I've got an overnight race coming up, therefore I will go out a few times with friends and we'll run through the night. I wouldn't ever do that personally because for me that would just be such high stress that the benefits wouldn't be there.
And personally, I think the amount of recovery needed from an all-night run negates the benefits you get.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm of that school of thought too. So the older I get, the more I think, even some of the stuff I've done where I've sailed close to the wind and maybe got away with it, it's not prudent. It's certainly not. As I say, it wouldn't be something I'd recommend anyone else do. I've spent a lot of time flirting with just burnt out. And I just accepted there were going to be bad races as a result of doing a lot of races. And I was fine with that. Not everyone's going to be, though. It's a funny one. There's no real guidebook on any of this.
No, that's right.
I think you've got people going into the space and coaching who've done some of these really long races. And so I think you can either use those guys in a true sense, get a coach, or you do what I think a lot of us who've done these races do, which is just pick the brains of other 6-day runners, either on races or outside of races, and then just get there. And I think a lot of the things that have helped me the most have been things I couldn't have been told about that I've had to witness firsthand. There's a German runner who she walks now, but she's relentless. She does not waste a minute when she's on these races, and that's something I learned from watching her and going, wow, that's really impressive how she does that. But it's not something I think that someone would have ever told me. Be brutal in your approach to time when you are on the course. So stuff like that, you just I don't think it's easy to be taught it.
So what's next for you? You sort of hinted that you're not really planning much because of COVID, but do you have anything sort of? At the moment,
no, I'm extending my philosophy of not putting pressure on myself to this whole year in a way. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting time in the sport because I think we've had a pent-up demand for races, and so they are oversubscribing, and races that I wouldn't have expected to oversubscribe. So I'm aware that not putting an entry in for anything eventually will catch me. So I'm starting to think about, entries and the like. But look, no, I don't have I'm concerned about planning too much for this year and being, struck with a snap lockdown or a border closure and having a lot emotionally invested. Like I've seen with some of the race cancellations, people are truly a bit gutted, and it's hard. It's hard on the runners. It's hard on the race director. Definitely. And there is a part of me that says, just take a breath when, if I can worry about it when things start to normalise a bit. I'm concerned about putting a lot of pressure on myself this year.
I think that's a good idea. A lot of people have spoken about 2021 as if it's, going to be all wonderful, but we've already seen that it's not necessarily that way. And unfortunately, and I keep saying, well, hopefully by after June, but
we don't know.
We just don't know. So I think, sure, maybe enter races, but even then, don't put so much stock in them that you're going to be devastated if they don't go ahead.
I think that's the really pragmatic approach, is just get the entry in, because it's better if you do. The race director's got some idea what the numbers are and so on. I think this really is the approach to take. Get the entry in and then see where you get to when you get there. Because we don't know how this vaccine rollout's going to go, and there's a lot of variables here for this year.
Yeah,
I think it'll be better next year.
This year, seriously, if we're saying the same thing next year, it'll be very depressing.
It will be.
Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, and congratulations on such an awesome run and for representing Australia, and just it's just brilliant. So we're all very proud of you, and it was a well-deserved award, or 2 awards. So how can people find you or follow you? Are you on the socials?
I don't put anything particularly interesting on Insta, just the odd picture of semi-interesting things I see in the bush and the like. Oh yeah, look, I'm on Facebook. I'm friends with lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
Twitter, I am on Twitter, but at the moment I'm trying to avoid it.
Yes, Twitter can be that can be a bit depressing too, with all the COVID stuff on there.
Can be, but no, I am on social.
Yeah. All right. Well, just look for Annabel. Just make sure you spell her name correctly. Then you'll find her a bit easier. We were talking about that a bit earlier. So people misspell our names, and I misspelled Annabel, so I felt terrible.
I don't apologise. No, everyone misspells Annabel.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks for taking the interest.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.